Good afternoon. Welcome to Innovate, Partnering for Civil Works Research and Development. I'm Janice Karcher, Deputy Director of ERDIC Works. We're a partnership intermediary of the U.S. Army's Engineer Research and Development Center, better known as ERDIC. The presentation today will help explain a new initiative that's being launched that invites and encourages submissions that will focus on R&D, applied solutions that address some of the nation's most critical civil works issues and problems. This is an opportunity for businesses and academia to that address the defined problems that you'll hear from our ERDIC partners about today. I'd like to share a little bit about ERDIC Works. We are a partnership intermediary. Our job is to help ERDIC connect to industry and academia on some of the most critical problems and issues that they're working on. And so you'll see from me later in today's presentation some of the details and easy access to the project opportunities that exist. I'm pleased to introduce the first speaker today, Dr. Robert Moser of the Geotechnical and Structures Lab.
Well, thanks a lot, Janice, and we're really excited to be here with you all this afternoon to talk about partnership opportunities for civil works R&D, something that we're really championing and looking for the best and brightest from across industry and academia to bring new technology and innovation into our civil works R&D portfolio. Really happy to be here this afternoon. I'm Robert Moser. I'm a Senior Scientific Technical Manager with the Geotechnical and Structures Laboratory here at ERDIC. I'm also the lead technologist for the Next Generation Water Resources Infrastructure Strategic Focus Area in Civil Works R&D. And you're going to hear from Dr. Gaurav Savant and others about some of the opportunities and of interest that we have. And so to start off with, many of you are familiar with the Corps of Engineers mission areas and portfolio. But as a quick primer, these are the 6 primary mission areas for the Army Corps of Engineers, and they range from military topics to contingency operations. The primary thing we're going to talk about today is what we do in civil works. And so our civil works mission, which you can see there in the center, focuses primarily on inland and coastal navigation, flood risk management, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. What we do here at ERDIC is in support of the research and development mission as the research and development arm of the Army Corps of Engineers. And so our mission set is really to development for all of these missions of the Corps and more broadly for the Department of Defense. And so today we'll talk about our interest areas and future directions in civil works more specifically. And so what is civil works? Right? And I think a lot of the nation knows about our civil works program, our infrastructure projects, our ecosystem, our hydropower facility. And so critical water resources infrastructure, hydropower, the Corps is the largest hydropower supplier of the nation, recreation, and other business lines, which you can see there on the right hand of the slide. Hundreds of billions of dollars of economic benefits and value that's generated for the nation works portfolio on an annual basis. So here in the Army Corps of Engineers, we are very passionate about research and development. If you tuned into our Chief of Engineers, Lieutenant General Spellman's live session just a little bit earlier today, you heard his passion, and he's a very inspiring leader that's very passionate about portfolio. You heard about some of the top 10 priorities that we have. And as you can see there on the right, we have our research and development strategy. This was released a little over a year ago, and it's an easy Google to go find it on the internet. You can use that QR code to download it as well. But we're really looking at what are the grand challenges Corps of Engineers portfolio and what we do in support of the nation now and into the future. Right. And so we know that we're not going to be able to build our way out. We know that people are not going to fix our problems for us. And so when we think of technology and innovation requirements to address those challenges, we're going to do that through research and development. Another key, I think it's really central to the event that we have today, is our Chief's priorities in partnership and innovation. Right. And so that's central to what we're talking about today. And so as far as the Civil Works R&D portfolio, you can see our vision and mission statement here on the chart. It's largely to do the type of research and development that supports those mission areas for the Civil Works portfolio: navigation, flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, hydropower, water supply, all of those critical mission sets. And so what is needed from materials and design methods and robotic inspection and new ways that we construct, new ways that we restore ecosystems, how can we to support the Civil Works mission? And the drivers for this type of work are larger than they've ever been before. As you're all aware, we have changes in our society, changes in our economy. We have changes in environmental hazards and natural hazards that are facing our infrastructure that oftentimes, long before our designers were even thinking about the types of hazards that they're facing or the types of requirements that those projects have today. We have aging infrastructure, right? And even with reinvigorated investment in our infrastructure, we're still going to have an aging infrastructure portfolio. So how do we modernize that? How do we ensure it's resilient and reliable to long into the future? And then finally, rapid technology development, right? You can turn on the news, you can read a journal paper on artificial intelligence and manufacturing technology and biotechnology. There's all these exciting developments in the science and technology community. How can we fold those in to support the Civil Works mission as well? And so what we're visioning here is I think a grand vision on how technology and innovation can support the Civil Works portfolio in the future. These are just a couple vignettes to highlight some of the things that we're thinking about conceptually we could do through research and development in the future. So on the top left, just an example of some of the things that we're working on today and looking to implement in projects using eco-hydraulic modeling, right? Combining hydraulic models with biological and environmental models to optimize the way that we build and operate projects so they can support the flood risk management requirements, water supply, hydropower, but also balance that in an optimal way with the environmental systems that also exist in our waterways. In the top right, another area in disaster response, right? How can we use autonomous systems coupled to models that could go in times of disaster, characterize the environment, automatically update models and our understanding of it, and optimize our response during disasters. In the bottom left, something we're doing today and looking to grow in forecast-informed reservoir operations, building in weather forecasting and understanding of future drivers, future hazards, and how we optimally operate our projects to balance their flood risk management requirements along with water supply, particularly in cases like drought. And then finally, at the bottom right, an area that we'll talk a good bit about is things in sediment management and dredging, right? How can we revolutionize the way that we manage our waterways with autonomous systems and models that go in and optimally maintain those waterways? And so all of that is driving 6 strategic focus areas, which you can see here on the chart. So these, in essence, are the modernization priorities for the Army Corps of Engineers and our Civil Works R&D portfolio. And as you'll see later in Janice's presentation on some of the opportunities upcoming, all of those opportunities are aligned towards these 6 strategic focus areas. And so in the top left, we have ecosystem R&D. This is aligned with sustainable species and ecosystem management activities. How do we ensure we have healthy ecosystems? How do we mitigate invasive and nuisance species? And how do we promote threatened and endangered species for healthy environmental systems in our ecosystem restoration activities? In the middle, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is infrastructure R&D, aligned with the next generation water resources infrastructure strategic focus area. In essence, this is how do we look at our existing infrastructure portfolio and new infrastructure that the nation is asking us to build. How do we ensure it's resilient, modern, and reliable to support all of the various requirements that it has? On the top right, you have sediment management. This gets into dredging, right? One of the biggest mission sets that we have in the Corps of Engineers operations and maintenance portfolio. So how do we revolutionize the way we do dredging operations? How can we do it more proactively? But an important component to that is sediment management. How do we deal with all the sediment that we collect during those types of activities? And how can we beneficially use it in ways that provides value and engineering benefits out of that sediment management mission? In the bottom left is water modeling. This is focused on the comprehensive water risk management strategic focus area. And Dr. Gaurav Savant will speak a little bit more about some of the details there. But this is big picture. How do we deal with future natural hazards, compound hazards to more optimally design our flood risk management projects? How do we operate those projects in an optimal way? And how do we respond to disasters and incorporate community resilience factors? And so you'll hear a lot more about that from Gaurav. I'll skip to the bottom right, and this is on crisis mitigation in the crisis mitigation response and recovery strategic focus area. If you turn on the news, you can see there's disasters happening all the time, and a lot of those affect the Civil Works mission, right? We have floods, we have droughts, we're going into hurricane season. So how do we deal with crises? How do we better mitigate those when we build our infrastructure projects? But we know we can't mitigate everything. And so in times of disaster, how can we more optimally respond and recover to enable our communities to be more resilient? And then finally, in the middle bottom, you can see AI, robotics, and data, right? And so this is really a cross-cutting enabler. As we look across all of these different mission sets, how do we better utilize data analytics, artificial intelligence to really revolutionize the way that we use data and make decisions? And so all of this is feeding into opportunities, right? And so what I'm showing here on the chart, on the left-hand side, you can see some partnering opportunities through open and continuous announcement. ERDIC is always looking for the best and brightest and newest technology from the private sector and how we can integrate that into our mission. Probably many of you are familiar with our broad agency announcement. This is an open solicitation for basic and applied research. It cuts across all of our technical areas across our laboratories here at ERDIC. One of the new things that Janice will tell you a little bit about is a new commercial solutions opening. This is something that we're growing, and you'll see ERDIC Works is helping to facilitate through partnering opportunities. But we'll also be opening a continuous commercial solutions opening announcement. And this is for technologies from industry. It's for prototyping new types of very applied systems that are really ready for technology demonstrations and integration into the things that we do in Civil Works. But what I'm particularly excited to talk about with you this afternoon are the opportunities on the right-hand side. And so as we build the strategic Civil Works R&D portfolio, we're keenly interested in how do we align directly with the projects that we're going to be working on here in the near future. And by that, I mean FY24. This is the upcoming fall. And so these are new opportunities that are opening in conjunction with this event for a new specific broad agency announcement, which has, very specific topics inside of it aligned with our strategic focus areas, and a commercial solutions opening for more applied technologies and prototyping applications. These are specifically focused on the infrastructure and water modeling strategic focus areas. And so Janice is going to tell you a little bit more about how ERDIC Works is helping to facilitate those solicitations. And we're really excited to see some of the new ideas that are going to come from our industry and academic partners through those opportunities. You can find them on the ERDIC Works website. These are some of the links there, and Janice will provide a little bit more information on how to get to them and how to use the website and submission portal. The last thing I wanted to highlight on future opportunities is we have a variety of other areas where we anticipate having tech challenges and other partnership opportunities. So be on the lookout for other opportunities connected to Civil Works R&D, along with the other mission sets in military applications and other things we do here at ERDIC. These are two opportunities that are likely coming up throughout the summer and fall. One focused specifically on that sediment management and dredging topic, especially around innovations in sediment management and beneficial use. And then also tech challenges and design competitions related to how we're going to use durable high-performance composite materials as replacements for steel structures in our Civil Works projects. And so the last couple areas we'll highlight are the specific strategic focus areas that are the focus of these targeted upcoming opportunities for partnership. So the first one of those is the area that I lead, the infrastructure strategic focus area, next generation water resources infrastructure. And what you can see here is really our lines of effort, our priority investment areas for capability development in the infrastructure strategic focus area. And so we're interested in understanding existing conditions and projects. How do we understand the chemistry, the physics, the mechanics of deterioration and performance of infrastructure? Then how do we take that and predict the future, right? We have this aging infrastructure portfolio. We have new infrastructure. We want to understand how that's going to perform. Where do we optimize our investments for repair and rehabilitation? And so, physics and chemistry-based models that can really project the future and help us to understand the risk and reliability of those structures. The third area is technologies that help us, shape outcomes, right? These are all the things, the tools in the toolbox that will help us fix those projects, modernize those projects, or build new projects to be better. So materials, robotics, manufacturing, sensors, all the things that we can employ to improve the performance of our projects. And the final area is really around decision support. So if I know what's going on in my project, I can predict the future and I have a lot of tools. How do I tie that all together to optimize the decisions that we make in our infrastructure projects? And so conceptually, this is where we're going, right? Around this understand, predict, and shape paradigm. And the opportunities I want to highlight here are just getting into where we see cross-cutting technologies in material sciences, manufacturing sciences, new high-performance computing and modeling and simulation, all these innovations in science and technology that we think can be brought to bear on the infrastructure challenges. And so with that, we're going to shift over to the water modeling strategic focus area. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Savant, to brief you on that. So, Gaurav.
Thank you, Janice and Robert, for that great introduction. And those would be some tough acts to follow. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I am Gaurav Savant. I'm a Senior Scientific Technical Manager at the ERDC's Coastal and Hydraulics Lab, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the water modeling focus area, which is related to the comprehensive water risk management strategic R&D that we are proposing to start in FY24 and onwards. So the goal of the water modeling strategic focus R&D is to create capabilities that are continental scale to mitigate the hazards from water-related events. So we want to be able to know what a drop of water does since the time it hits the ground all the way to the ocean, including the rivers, the overland flow, the estuaries, and the coast. Now, why is that important? Look, we know that the environmental forcings that are causing environmental or weather-related hazards are changing. Our floods are becoming more frequent. They're becoming larger and more stronger and more prevalent. They are at a larger scale. Our droughts are becoming longer. The hurricanes that our coasts face, they are becoming larger, more frequent, and more severe, causing more damage to the nation's economic well-being, as well as a societal framework. So we know that we need to conduct R&D to understand the impacts of those events on the nation and how to mitigate the adverse impacts of those events. So the water modeling R&D is focused on creating a continental scale hydroterrestrial risk knowledge to build resilient and strong. How do we want to do it? We want to create integrated Earth observations. By that, I mean, we should have in situ remote sensing as well as other means of collecting data so that we know what the now state of the water condition is, as well as to predict where that condition might be in the future. We want to use that data and the numerical modeling to create risk-informed decision support that our managers in the USACE can actually use to create better designs that are resilient against the changing environmental conditions that they face. All of that is going to be enabled by a national hydroterrestrial simulation framework, real-time high-resolution models that are running all the time, providing continuous information to the managers and other people as they create designs for the projects that are adaptable and are changing with time to meet the mission requirements. And all of that is now then built into how our designs impact the societal benefits and social justice missions. Our projects can derive a lot of benefit from investigating how society interacts with the flood risk management projects that are ongoing or that will be built in the future. Now, to support that mission, the water modeling R&D has come up with certain research requirements or research topics where we need support of our collaborators and people like you who are calling in to this webcast. We have divided those into 4 distinct buckets. One is ready now for the future, and the timescales on that is seasons to decades. R&D that needs to be conducted now so that we are prepared for the hazards that we face in the future. On those, some of those are determination of water flow from the snowpack. How much water do we get as the snowpack that fell during the wintertime melts? How do we support Arctic communities while the permafrost melts and exacerbates the wave impacts on their communities? How do we create decision advantages so that our managers and projects have the best available data to create those structures that last well into the future and are resilient against those changes? That includes creating artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that are adaptable and help make our modeling faster, help make the decisions that we have to make faster and better and adaptable. How do we determine how the sediment load in the future is going to impact our flood risk management mission as well as a navigation mission? How does the changing hydrology impact how much sediment goes into our navigation channels? Because that has an impact on navigation as well as flood risk management. All of that to lead to empowering our stakeholders. How do we create products using R&D that allow managers to predict low waters in a navigation channel, predict what the impacts of compound flooding would be on a community or a larger state or the entire nation? To conduct this water modeling R&D successfully, we need the help and support of people like you who are tuning into this event. And now I will pass it over to Janice with ERDICworks, and she will talk about how ERDICworks is facilitating this R&D.
Thank you, Dr. Savant. We'd like to encourage everyone to start using the question component of the chat feature in this event. As you can see, there are a lot of important and critical topics that you've heard from Dr. Moser and Dr. Savant about. It's my pleasure to introduce the portal and explain the role that ERDICworks is playing in helping you submit solutions for consideration by ERDIC. So as we talk a bit about this portal, I want to share a bit about ERDICworks as well. So ERDICworks is in place to really help ERDIC achieve 4 goals. They want to expand their network. They've got us in place to help reach out to and engage new potential partners who may hold the key to a solution for some of the problems that they're helping other federal government customers address. We also help ERDIC leverage its strengths. We're giving visibility to some of the important work that you see coming from the 7 labs of the Engineer R&D Center. Third, we're here to help them save time and accelerate the progress of their projects. As you can see, many of them have significant implication for the country. And lastly, we're here to simplify the process for you, our audience of innovators within industry and academia, to submit solutions, have them reviewed quickly, and learn in a timely fashion whether your solution fits a need and an opportunity to collaborate with ERDIC going forward. This is a shot from our website. I'd like to introduce you to this ERDICworks web portal. And you'll see that there are actually 3 different announcements that are new to this page under current events and tech challenges. Not only is the event for today on the website, you'll also see that the details regarding the CivilWorks R&D Collider and the CivilWorks Commercial Solutions opening are accessible there. What you will see as you enter that website is that the CivilWorks Collider is really a term that means multi-phase, multi-topic, all focused on civil works. So within this platform are almost 30 different project opportunities that you heard Dr. Moser and Dr. Savant refer to in their presentations. The timeline on this particular Collider identifies that all submissions need to be submitted through the ERDICworks portal no later than June 26, 2023. So in about 5 weeks, the submissions for these particular Collider topics will be due. As you can see, the submissions open as of today. And so once this event is finished, you will be able not only to review the content, which is live on the website, but then also start investigating the submission platform and creating an account, which is needed for you to be able to submit. This process moves quite quickly here at ERDIC once submissions are received. So you'll see that by September, those that are down selected and of most interest to ERDIC could be invited to submit a full proposal in anticipation of funding to be coming to ERDIC and possibly awarded to partners in early 2024. The Civil Works Collider will look like this on the website. So when you land on this page, you'll see some helpful introduction and explanation of the program. As you scroll down in this section, you will actually see two types of projects. One is the basic and applied research category that you heard about from Dr. Moser. This is defined by a new broad agency announcement from ERDIC that supports this limited timeline of these particular topics that are, again, in the basic and applied research category. So lower technology readiness level, lower TRL level as compared to some of the other innovations that ERDIC is looking for. As you use the drop down, so let me go back. So within each of these topics, you can use the drop down arrow to then read the additional detail. So in this particular case, this non-destructive evaluation and geophysics tools component then has bulleted specific items that they are seeking proposals on. So the website should make it very easy to read the introductory language, the stage setter content, but then also a definition of the specific kind of solution that ERDIC is seeking. Please know that these are not specific project requests with a specific dollar amount, with a specific set of parameters or specifications. This is a broad definition from ERDIC of what they're looking for, and they want to be creative, and they want to hear innovative ideas from our submitting innovators. So feel free to brainstorm and be creative about how your solution may fit within the categories that they're lifting up. The other category within the Collider is in the commercial solution category. So commercial solutions is also guided by a separate set of guidelines. So each of these BAA and CSO guidelines will identify the format and the content that ERDIC is seeking in the white paper submissions. White papers typically don't need to be any longer than 3 pages. And so please consider this a pre-proposal level content with rough order of magnitude pricing to get things started. Again, if you selected the top subject in this commercial solutions category, you would then see that there is one particular topic that ERDIC is seeking submissions on in the composites durability and service life prediction category. Also launching today is the Civil Works Commercial Solutions opening. This project is actually open for 1 year. So there's obviously benefit to submitting sooner rather than later, but this one does not have a June 26th deadline. It will continuously present an opportunity for innovators to submit and have their concepts reviewed. There's a timely turnaround from ERDIC on those reviews. ERDIC has the opportunity to communicate back 3 things. 1, this may not fit what we are working on or plan to work on from an ERDIC perspective. It may fit what ERDIC is interested to work on, but there may not be funding available yet. In that case, they're able to put the white paper in a library for up to 3 years and start negotiating when funding becomes available. And third, if the project happens to align with a project opportunity that ERDIC is currently funded for, they may move directly into negotiation for an opportunity for a contract or agreement. As you can see, in this case, in the CSO category, there are also broad categories defined with the arrow drop down to explain what is meant in those topics. And in this case, you'll see that there are actually 4 categories in the infrastructures component of the CSO. How does the solution get submitted through the ERDIC Works portal? Each of these new portal components provide a link for submission. The platform that we're using is called Submittable. Submittable is used by other PIAs and other government entities to support the submission and evaluation process. Submittable requires that the submitting party create a password-protected account. So the first thing that you would need to do if you haven't submitted a solution through us in the past is to create that account and set your password. Utilizing the streamlined process, you will answer a few questions within fields in the portal and then attach your PDF solution document, which again, typically would not need to be any longer than 3 to 5 pages tops. This then triggers the start of the review process for ERDIC. In the case of the Collider, that's a pretty intensive process of getting through all of the reviews in the month of July by the ERDIC team. In the case of the CSO, that Commercial Solutions opening, it is open all year, and so the ERDIC team is prepared to conduct those reviews as submissions come in. So with that overview of the portal and how you'll be able to submit solutions in response to these opportunities, we'd like to move into the Q&A component of this event. We want to encourage everyone to continue submitting your questions. Those that have been submitted so far will now be addressed. We'll now move into a Q&A component of this event.
Hi, I'm Chris Kiefer with the U.S. Army Engineer Research and Development Center, and I'll be moderating today's question and answer session. I want to start by introducing, or in most cases reintroducing, our guests today. We're joined by Dr. Robert Moser, ERDIC's lead technologist for the Next Generation Water Resources Infrastructure Strategic Focus Area for Civil Works Research and Development, Dr. Gaurav Savant, ERDIC's lead technologist for the Comprehensive Water Risk Management, SFA, Ms. Alicia Bounds, an Acquisition Programs Manager at ERDIC, and Ms. Janice Karcher, Deputy Director at ERDIC Works. I want to start again by reminding you to submit your questions if you haven't done so yet, and the way to do that is easy. It's just simply by leaving a comment, typing them into the comment section on this LinkedIn broadcast, and then we will be filtering those questions and taking them right now. We're excited to have such a large audience turnout for this virtual event, this historic virtual event, and because of that, we anticipate a high volume of questions. The questions that we do not get to on today's broadcast are going to be compiled in a frequently asked questions section on the ERDIC Works website. You can find that at erdcwerx.org. So you'll find a lot of those questions there. There's also going to be a section on that website where you can submit a question. So if your question's not there, you can easily submit it right in that web portal. And with that, let's get started with our questions. Our first question is for the team itself. Can you talk about how significant the Civil Works R&D partnership opportunity is, and maybe in the context of other ERDIC partnerships? Robert, I'll let you take that first.
Okay. Is that okay? Janice?
Yeah.
Okay. So certainly, I think here at ERDIC, across our laboratories, we have a myriad of existing industry and academic partnerships. I don't know what the exact number is on number of contracts and things, but it's probably I'm sure it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year in partnership activities, along with CRADAs and educational partnership agreements and other ways that we partner on technology and innovation. But oftentimes when we do that, we do it within our projects, kind of piecemeal, where we have specific needs. And so I think one of the things I'm really excited about, at least in this Civil Works initiative, is it's really one of the first times where we've collectively looked across our program and aligning with where we're going in the future, and really be proactive about developing partnerships and specific solicitations and vehicles in order to develop those. So I'm really excited about that. It is historic for the Civil Works program. If you were online a little earlier with the chief, he talked about the expansion of the program, and you've seen some press releases about that. And so we're, really championing an expansion of the Civil R&D program. And the key part of that is partners. And so we're excited to be part of that and to bring industry and academic partners to the table. A critical part of that, as is the case for a lot of our programs, is Erdic Works, who has been facilitating a lot of these partnerships. So I would kind of point to Janice to maybe speak about some thoughts that she has on it too.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I think, certainly the work of the team here at Erdic and others also involved in Civil Works have really established a forward vision for the challenges that this team wants to address over the next several years, and have really brought forward those opportunities on the Erdic Works platform to lift them up and start inviting submissions. This is the largest by far of the content that we've promoted for Erdic over the last 5 years of our existence. So not only is there a large number of projects, it's moving forward at a rather quick pace, but it also represents the opportunity for up to $20 million to be awarded in this next fiscal year for projects with Erdic. So it is momentous and historic, not only from an Erdic perspective, but also from an Erdic Works perspective.
Yeah, exciting. I mean, it's a big day. It's exciting to be part of this event. Did either of you have anything else kind of add on that?
I think Robert and Janice covered everything, all the high points.
Next question is, what is the weighted value for diagnostics versus new technologies specifically designed to repair our nation's dams, levees, berms, and other infrastructure-related problems? Robert, being an infrastructure question, do you want to tackle that one first?
I guess I can speak to that briefly. I can see value in both places. I think a novel application of existing technologies in some of the constraints that we have in infrastructure projects is definitely an interest area. How do we better understand maybe sensors from another industry or models from another industry and how we can use them to assess aging infrastructure? But we know there's a lot of developments in new sensors, in new detection capabilities, new theories. So I think there's interest in both places. How could we better utilize the technologies that are maybe at a higher stage of readiness to apply in the Civil Works mission, but also maybe what are some of the emerging technologies that we want to help to kind of get across the finish line and understand how we could apply them to Civil Works. So not to say that we can do everything, and we're certainly interested in everything, and I think would be excited to see the ideas and how we could apply them for sure.
The next question from our audience is, have you all tried running water through an osmosis process, water strained through an ultraviolet light while enclosed in a scalar electromagnetic field? Does anybody have anything to say on that?
Well, I have not at Erdic, but my master's thesis was osmosis and ultraviolets and ozone. So that's all I have on that. I don't think, Robert, do you have anything else to add on that in terms of like water infrastructure maybe for water purification?
Yeah, it's not at least from my awareness, a specific driver in this portfolio. Certainly other things we do at Erdic in water treatment technologies and environmental remediation touch on some of that. But I don't think for Civil Works that's something, at least in these current solicitations, we're talking about.
Sure. Next question is funding anticipated in FY24. It goes on to ask, no FY23 funds available now.
I can maybe speak to that and turn it over to my colleagues here. So these solicitations are primarily focused on proactive planning towards FY24. So can we do better to proactively partner and develop contracts so we can be working kind of hand in hand as we do R&D here at Erdic and work in conjunction with industry or academic partners. We always have opportunities for partnership. We're actively working FY23 programs right now. We just submitted budget requests for FY26 and we're planning our strategic directions for just submitted our 25 portfolio and we're planning strategic directions for FY26. So we're always doing Civil Works R&D. We always have these open and continuous announcements out there, the BAA and now a new commercial solutions opening announcement. But really the Collider event that Janice told you a little bit about is specifically at building good multi-year research projects to start in conjunction with our FY24 program. And I don't know, Alicia or Janice, if you all have anything to add.
Yeah, no, I think that aligns well. And one of the reasons that we're getting started now, typically we're a little behind the ball once that funding starts coming in, and then it takes a little while for us to catch up. And so this is being very much proactive, and I'm really excited about it. I know contracting is too, just because it's not all going to hit in September. And so I think that's really exciting to see everyone leaning forward and making sure that we're, getting those projects done on time.
Have all the groundwork laid so
That's right.
that by the time when the funding hits, you
That's
can
right.
hit the ground running. Obviously, these are big projects that'll take a lot to execute. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Robert and Gaurav, the next question is for each of you. And just kind of looking at the proposals, can you kind of tell us what ERDIC is looking for in a proposed effort in both the BAA and CSO topics, such as impact, novelty, and innovation?
Probably start with you if you want to start, girl.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is all three. Primarily looking, if we got a hypothetical proposal that was really high impact, but was reusing maybe technologies from some other industry towards the water resources or water modeling problem sets, that would be interesting to us. But again, go back to what we had talked about in our previous presentation. There were those challenge areas for the water risk, for the water modeling R&D effort. Go through those and then pair those with what your capabilities are and what you're proposing. So if you are proposing something that actually lines up with the requirements that the Army Corps has in R&D, then that would be looked up. That would be of use and interest to the ARDC as we move forward in achieving the goals of the water modeling research. Robert?
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely covers down on some of the key points I was thinking too. I would say, I guess, for proposals that we're interested in, one thing is it's somewhat on us to understand the value of a technology in the context of the mission. But if you can help us do that, that would be great. Taking the time to, and if you're in this event, you're taking the time to do this, but understanding the Civil Works mission, understanding some of the challenges that we're facing. Unlike some of our R&D portfolio that's a little more behind the firewall on what we can talk about, everything in Civil Works is open. So you can find all the things that the Corps of Engineers is doing in Civil Works. And so I think understanding that, understanding how your technology could potentially benefit that, and including it in the value proposition and impact statements in your proposal, I think to us would be very valuable. And then the other thing I think is important to highlight, and this is true not just for Civil Works, but really across all of ERDIC's programs, is we seldom have projects that are science for the sake of science, right? Even when we talk about basic research, we're thinking about fundamental advancements in science technology that could apply, if successful, towards a future application. And so I think even in those basic efforts, thinking what is the realm of the possible, how could my technology be successful, what are some of the performance metrics that I'm looking for success, is I think very useful for us to include in a proposal and help to understand its value in the program.
Yeah, sure. I think it's helpful. Help a lot of people understand, kind of better as they put these together. What about, and the next audience question asks, any idea about funding amount, how the funding can be spent, students, staff, equipment, etc. Do you need a use-safe collaborator, I guess, to apply?
Do you want to maybe speak about just kind of the high-level content, and I can speak about alignment with programs, maybe, Alicia?
Sure. Yeah. So all of the above, really. I would think whatever's necessary to get that project done, it would be allowable, and so. And everything's negotiable, right? And so just keep that in mind. I think another point to the last question too is be thinking about the future in terms of where those advancements can go. Putting in for a 3-year project. Well, maybe we end up awarding, negotiating 2, but at least it's out there and potential. And we want to be thinking through those. Rather than having to reissue contracts or do things. We're trying to think more. Multi-year, get those projects in alignment. And of course, funding's not guaranteed every year, but we do like to set those up with the potential. An option is much easier to award than a new contract.
Sure.
And so thinking in the future, with those project teams and figuring out what that looks like, for sure.
Can you re-ask like the second part of the question?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
So it's both asking about ideas about funding amount and then how funding can be spent, student, staff, equipment, etc. And maybe the part you're referring to is, do you need to have a use-safe collaborator?
Okay. Yeah, so I think Alicia covered kind of what can it be used for. Whatever makes sense to do the R&D the right way, that's what we're interested in. As far as alignment with tech transition, partners, stakeholders, basically in construction of this collider, the topics that are featured there in these solicitations are aligned with programs in our portfolio. And so that's really where our thought is, if you're applying against those, you're going to have a stakeholder on the ERDIC side and all the way through our headquarters and out to the field where we've got proponents and stakeholders that are really interested in advocating for these technologies. And so that will happen. I don't think that that's something that we anticipate as a requirement before proposing, but it's definitely an expectation that this is not, we just submit a report and maybe we publish it in the library 3 years later. This is like a really collaborative effort working directly with our stakeholders, I would say.
I think one of the things that Robert mentioned that bears repeating is collaboration. Like, one of the things that we're trying to do is not have transactional relationships.
Right.
With, like someone mentioned, students and staff. Right? That goes into a long-term collaboration. We want to have strategic partners who not only help us execute the R&D, but also those students who can help us create a future-ready workforce. So that's also in there, and collaboration is the key for it. So students, like Alicia said, whatever is required to get the BA or the project done, and if students are a part of it, that's great.
And the other thing you asked about, I think, was on kind of funding levels and whatnot. We anticipate awarding quite a few contracts as a result of these solicitations, hopefully, to support us in execution of the work. We put out some notional funding ranges just as guidance on the solicitation, anticipating that that's aligned with each one of the subtopics in the collider. So you have these overarching thrust areas and a narrative, and then under each one of those, there's basically like a bulleted list of some of the particular requirements. And so that's where we're thinking individual funding levels affiliated with those activities. But I think an important point I wanted to drive home is most of these projects are things we don't think we'll solve in a year, right? There may be some, especially in the commercial solutions opening, maybe there's a new technology and we want to procure that and use it in a demonstration as in a short-term project. But if we want to solve how to predict compound coastal storm surge and overland flow in urban canyon, I don't know. If we want to solve those hard problems, it's going to take a while. And so most of our internal programs are built as multi-year programs, and I think that's what we would desire for, especially those basic and applied research projects, multi-year proposals where, again, we're working collaboratively as we execute work and work in concert with the partner as well. So.
And that's where the relationship piece comes in. Like you mentioned, not just the transactional agreement, but having that relationship, because it is a long-term approach, to solving it. So
yeah. And I think that's kind of I guess it's a fun thing, but a little different thing than maybe other grant agencies, is because we're researchers too. And so we're doing things in concert with you all and really interested in, I think, learning.
Yeah, sure. Next question is probably Alicia, maybe Janice may have something on this one as well, but are there mechanisms for institutes outside of the U.S. to access these opportunities for funding, such as Canada?
Yes. So we don't have any foreign restrictions. Of course, depending on what the project is, there could be some ITAR, which probably not really relatable to Civil Works, and EAR, the export controls. But outside of that, we don't have any restrictions. Actually, it's encouraged, foreign participation.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, as a matter of fact, ERDIC actually has an international research office based in London in the UK, and so there is a commitment to international relationships, and so that would be consistent with ERDIC's relationships that already exist around the world.
Sure, that's fitting well with that. Will there be many Arctic-focused requests beyond water modeling?
Do you want to take that, or?
So there are a lot of Arctic requests for water modeling, and water in the Arctic very closely ties in with infrastructure, with the permafrost melt and the seawalls that are consequently impacted, and the communities that are impacted after all of those downstream effects come to them. So I think there are a lot of requirements from the Arctic for resilient infrastructure, resilient transport networks, resilient power networks, and just societal resilience. So I can imagine the water modeling part would feed into a lot of different requirements for the Arctic. And do you agree with that, Robert?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interest area and a priority for the Corps, and cold regions. The Arctic is a fairly narrow band if you look by definition of the United States of America, but we have a lot of infrastructure and area that's impacted by extreme cold regions, by snowpack, by permafrost. So there's definitely an interest in that for infrastructure, for snowpack modeling, for permafrost melting and coastal resilience. I think there's interest there. I'm not sure how keen that is in the current opportunities aligned with programs, but it's definitely something that we're focused on and probably building some programs in the future on too. At least I think so.
Yeah, I agree. And like Robert mentioned, like the Arctic there is used as a catch-all term for extreme cold weather. Mm-hmm. So if you broaden your imagination, think of like the mountainous region, the western US, and the snow that falls across the plains, and then that translates into flooding across the continental US, and then how that impacts infrastructure downstream, the resilience of levees and things like that. So if you expand the understanding of Arctic and replace it with extreme cold weather phenomena and its consequences on infrastructure and the resilience of societies and flood risk management and navigation, then yes, there are a lot of avenues and opportunities for collaboration between ERDIC and academia and industry in solving those problems. Janice?
Chris, of course, we're here to talk about Civil Works and introduce the commercial solutions opening for Civil Works, but the Arctic Works platform also includes a commercial solutions opening for the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab of ERDIC. And so you'll see on the Arctic Works portal several commercial solutions openings with different topic focus areas, and one does a nice job of bundling up and representing the areas of work that are conducted by the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab of ERDIC as well.
Mm-hmm. Sure, great. Yeah, thanks for noting that. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to mention. This next question is directed towards Robert and Alicia. It says, I see the near-term collider opportunities with funding available through CSO and BAA awards. Is there funding associated with the open and continuous announcement for BAAs and CSOs for civil works or other research areas?
Yeah, I guess
you want me to reread that, or you got it? Yeah.
So the collider is I would say directly aligned with these upcoming opportunities and anticipated funding and really proactively developing those partnerships. We do have the open, I think open and continuous is an okay word, open BAA and open CSO that are perpetual. They're open all the time, right? And so those are good vehicles so that we can, rapidly receive proposals and react to things that are in alignment with our program. So we'll have those out there, but I would say that's, there's not funding affiliated with those. It's a vehicle to award contracts, right? As opposed to the Collider event, where ideally we're aligning that with programs we anticipate coming up in the future. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, Alicia, if you may have a few thoughts about that too.
No, yeah, that's exactly my thoughts. But always remember, the Collider is going to end, a month after it's issued, and so if something does come up later, you always have the open and continuous CSO that you can, put a solution towards, or the open BAA as well, and we'll get those in front of technical reviewers, and then it's just more on a project by project basis at that time. There is no, set strategic initiative to really push forward those like the Collider.
Sure.
And the other thing is, nothing is stagnant in the Corps of Engineers. So there's always some type of a crisis. There's always some new opportunity, some new initiative, and so. While we're trying to do these specific things that are built around our schedule for programmatics, who knows what the next challenge is going to be that a new initiative will pop up, and so that's why we have these open announcements as well to support those throughout the year.
Sure, it makes you a little more flexible.
And ERDIC Works will help us to facilitate those solicitations too.
Yeah, great. This question is for the team, so just kind of however you all want to jump in and tackle it. The Collider mentions funding ranges desired for proposals, as well as proposals that are multi-year with funding anticipated in FY24. Can you explain that a little more?
Robert, you want to take
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. And if I say something I'm not supposed to, then you tell me to stop.
Well, because we went back and forth on how to,
Yeah.
really write that down on paper.
Yeah, it's hard to, we don't want to constrain ideas and proposals, and so I think the guidance there is fairly generic, but we did want to give a range for what, what we're thinking for academic and industry projects. And I think the range we put out was something on the order of $500K a year. Some of those topics are things that I think it's a small academic study to just think about a problem and help us understand maybe what the knowledge gaps are, or help us bring a tool that maybe industry has already developed and we're going to make some adaptations to it to use it in the civil portfolio. Some of them are big problems, like maybe a demonstration of sustainable cement chemistries and mass concrete prototype projects, right? That is something that could be multi-year, right? We start off with a fundamental study understanding the materials. We build that up to a laboratory study fleshing out engineering performance characteristics, durability, service life modeling, the things we care about as a material. I'm a materials by designer, so I'll follow this example. Understanding the material, and then we want to validate it at full scale, right? So maybe towards year 3, year 4 of the project, we want to scale that up. Can we make it in a concrete truck? Can I make it in a batch plant? Can I make it at the job site? How do we scale that up, bring it into the project? And then how are we going to maybe develop specifications and design guidance around that class of materials? Because in the end, all of these projects, we want to transition. And so I think each project will look a little bit different. But I think many of them, you'll see this cadence of, fundamental research that eventually results in some type of an applied understanding of the technology and transition of it into our programs or more broadly to the Corps of Engineers. And I think some of those are smaller projects, some of them are larger in scale. And I think, and I may ask Alicia to point out how the process works in Janus, but I think part of that is the two-step nature of the process. And so really this initial phase is to get an idea, and once we get an idea, we can work together on fleshing it out with a scope that makes sense. But I'll turn it to y'all to talk about that.
Right, and recently we had a big change on how we even accept proposals for our broad agency announcement, and so all of this is kind of following the same two-step process. The goal is to really get those ideas in front of the researchers first with either a solution brief or a pre-proposal, no longer accepting full proposals on the onset. Because again, it's a guessing game. We don't want industry spending a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time to just review a ton of information, right? So by doing this, it breaks down that process. It happens quicker, and it allows them to make those informed decisions before requesting those full proposals, which do take a lot more time and investment on both sides.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think with ERDIC-Works' help, we've really streamlined that to make it a better process for everyone on both sides. And one unique thing about the CSO is it allows us to look at those solutions and then decide what's the best acquisition strategy for this. Is that a contract? Is that a grant? Is it a cooperative agreement? What does that look like? And really, it can, whatever the project would benefit from, that's really, how that is. And we can use all different parts of the FAR as well for all you acquisition people out there. Whether that's 13, 15, everything from, advanced development to operational utility. It just gives us a lot of opportunity for flexibility depending on the project, which is a huge advantage of the CSO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say we're really encouraged to see the progress in co-development of new innovations. So we're seeing other transaction authority projects awarded by ERDIC that are now leading to co-invented IP that can now be taken to market by the industry partner that was involved in the innovation, but really addressing the opportunity that ERDIC wanted to meet with their federal government customers. So there are lots of pathways forward like that in these projects and in many of the others that are on the ERDIC-Works portal.
Sure.
I'm just glad there's people that know this stuff to help us. But I think it just goes to say that there's not a one-size-fits-all proposal in this. Every topic is a little bit different. And so I think we're looking for how you see your technology fitting into some of our requirements, Chris.
Yeah. Talking broadly about just the importance of partnerships, and we've talked a couple of times already. We just had the commanding general for the Corps of Engineers on an ERDIC Live broadcast earlier this morning. One of the questions he was asked was kind of what he saw as the biggest challenge facing the Corps of Engineers, and he said our biggest challenge is also our biggest opportunity, which is just the massive amount of workload that we're facing right now. And I would say that's where things like this come into play, and partnerships, and it's such a great challenge, such a large workload that you can't do it alone. You kind of having that collaboration on that power allows you to solve these challenges better and working together. Can you all kind of talk a little bit about that and just why these opportunities and these partnerships are so meaningful?
Yeah, so collaboration is the key to how we do successful R&D. Like, we know that Robert doesn't have enough resources, I don't have enough resources by myself to tackle the big problems that we are facing, right? It requires us to strategically partner with industry, academia, other agencies to do things, to let them do things that they do well, and we do things that we do well. I think that's a realization that is important. Like, we cannot do everything equally well at all times. There are things that my group or water modeling people at ERDIC specialize in. There are some things that we don't. And when we come across those things, we have to collaborate. Collaboration, not just with industry and academia, but also with other federal and state agencies and other nonprofits. There is a lot of capability available outside of ERDIC and the federal government that will allow us to meet these future challenges successfully if we collaborate well. So,
yeah,
Robert?
I don't know. I agree. I think I would probably be hard to find a research project we have that isn't executed without some type of partnership. And so I like what you said, Gaurav, because it's not transactional. It's not about bandwidth. It's about bringing unique expertise and capability that helps us solve problems in an innovative way. So, and I think also the approach with non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, with other agency partners, you'll see a lot of these projects that are in the collider are things that other agencies have equities in that we can leverage technologies and work on as well to apply them to civil work. So I think partnership is going to be a huge component of this. And maybe to get to what General Spellman was talking about, the nation is asking the Corps to do more than it ever has before in history. There's no shortage of natural disasters. Our infrastructure is aging. There's all these new requirements, and I think the Corps is seen as a delivery agent, right? We put projects in the ground and we do things across the country in our projects and projects with our non-federal sponsors. And so our mission is expanding. Our people are not expanding, right? And so we have to work with partners in order to execute those projects. And in the end, especially from a researcher's perspective, we don't envision developing this technology and then hiring a bunch of people to go out and do it at all of our projects, right? It'll be you all doing this on our projects. And so having, I think, especially academia on the front end, bringing new ideas, and industry on the back end for tech transition or tech transfer. Janice will correct me on the right words, but so that those technologies are kind of getting in the pipeline, they're being transitioned through criteria and specifications that are in our authority, but they're getting into industry, they're getting into the building codes and communities of practice so that people are using them as well, so that that technology can be delivered back to our projects. And I'll turn it to Janice.
I was just going to build on that to say that we see ERDIC actively partnering in order to identify talent also. So it's not just the component of capacity in your partners, but also the relationships that we see the 7 labs building with educational institutions in order to identify the talented people that you need to have actually join your team. So nearly all of the 7 labs are in a hiring mode right now. And so for those that are looking for a new career or want to make a difference in the country by contributing to one of the nation's most unique and contributing R&D organizations, joining the ERDIC team could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Alicia and Janice, next question really for you all is kind of about sam.gov. Do all submissions have to be registered within sam.gov?
Yes. Yes. In order to receive a federal award, you have to be in sam.gov. And if you're not already, please go ahead and do that. That process is not something that can be accomplished in a week or two. It's more like a month or two. And also those foreign companies, you've got an extra step in there to receive an in-cage code versus a cage code. And so you definitely want to go ahead and get that process started if you haven't already.
I will say, Chris, that some of the projects posted on the ERDICWorks portal have a longer time horizon, and so it could be possible for some of the commercial solutions openings for a party to submit thinking that, okay, this is an idea that if ERDIC doesn't pick it up until next year, I've still got time to get myself certified as an organization and be prepared for a contract. But in the case of this collider, as you can see from the notional project schedule, it moves quite quickly. There really isn't time to try to get an organization set up in sam.gov and be asked for a full proposal by September. Yeah. So it depends on the projects and their turnaround time, but this one has a rather quick turnaround time.
Sure. Gaurav, the next question is for you. For water modeling strategic focus, do you have an interface to provide real-time updates for all the sensors in place? How will the sensors relay data?
We do not have a platform in place right now. The best operational sensor data that I know of is rivergauges.com. That is something that's maintained by the MVD, Mississippi Valley Division, and it provides real-time gauge information for the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries project. But that sensor network and how we deploy and how we access information from that sensor network is one of the decision advantage requirements that we have. How do we use those sensors that is the most robust and the most efficient, and in a way that provides us the most information? And then how do we manage that information after it's available to us, right? Because it does anyone no good if that information comes to my computer and then just sits there, right? I have to have some service, maybe a cloud-based service or some other service that can then take that information and actually spread it out core-wide, that allows our people, engineers, scientists, and possibly outside of the core, allows them access to it. But right now we don't have it. There are some that exist, but they are very, I would say, project specific. There is not one across the water modeling focus area that encompasses all the goals of the focus area. So we are actively looking for solutions that allow us that capability.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, I know the question was specific to water modeling, but I would hazard, if you look across all the strategic focus areas and dive into the vision, this vision of taking real-time sensor data and coupling it with kind of a digital twin representation of a project or a community or a watershed, and it's real-time updating, it's playing out like future scenarios, and it's guiding optimal operations of those projects. That's kind of the vision that we see, whether it's dredging, whether it's built infrastructure, whether it's water risk management during a crisis.
Social health monitoring, all of them.
It's all connected together.
Yeah. Next question, and probably however you want to tackle it, probably more for Robert and Gaurav, is do you see a role for biotechnology in the Civil Works mission?
There definitely is. We actually have some specific interest areas, and we're probably actually in ERDIC's portfolio working that a lot more, I would say aggressively, at least right now, on the military side. So whether it's stabilizing airfields or rehabilitating infrastructure, I think there's some opportunities there looking at biotechnology. It's an area I think there's some interest here, and we're probably growing in the future. Likely leveraging things from other R&D portfolios, but whether it's stabilizing soil to prevent erosion damage from overtopping, or maybe going in and filling cracked concrete in dam structures to prevent leakage, or new types of coating technologies. I think there's a lot of applications, but again, I think biotechnology is one of the technologies that we have a lot of considerations for scale, right? And so while we see a lot of advancements, I think, in the medical community or other applications that are more niche and probably lower in scale, when we want to fix a spillway on a dam, we need a lot of it. It needs to be deployable, and so I think something that is feasible from an engineering perspective, but scalable long range. That's a driver that we would be really interested in.
Next question is about applications for nanotechnology. And the person who asked it added, my electrical engineering PhD was focused on nano and microfabrication. Do you all see any applications for that?
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of things, whether it's modifying materials, new types of sensors. There's a myriad of applications where we have interest in nanotechnology. Whether we use the word nanotechnology or not, I think those kind of materials, sensors, fabrication methods, there's a big emphasis here in advanced manufacturing technology, right? And a lot of new things there that enable us to produce nanocomposites or functionally graded materials or whatnot. So I definitely think it's an interest area. I think synthesizing nanoparticles that are not tied to kind of a long-range civil works application or something like that is probably not as big of an interest in the program. But ways we can utilize scalable nanotechnology to provide engineering benefits is definitely one.
Great. Keith, I'm glad we've got lots of questions coming in and glad to see the audience so engaged. Alicia, this next question goes to you. Does ERDIC apply performance-based contracts so that startups that match with a stakeholder requirement and receive 20% upfront to prove their technology, 40% to commercialize, and then the last 40% is the actual purchase of the solution by the stakeholder?
Okay, so I think we're talking about payment terms there, maybe?
Do you want me to reread it?
Yes.
So it's asking about performance-based contracts, so startups that match with a stakeholder requirement and receive 20% upfront to prove their tech, 40% to commercialize, and then the last 40% is the actual purchase of the solution by the stakeholder.
Okay, so in terms of, currently what we've got going on here at ERDIC, if we're talking about it as a whole, that sounds a lot like probably a prototype project, which in our military side of the house, we use other transactions, which makes that very easy because you've got your terms and they're all associated with actual performance. Firm fixed price milestones is what we call those. And I do see that transitioning over to civil works, hopefully in the near future.
Sure. Great.
Yeah, and I think that would be, a proposal that's structured in phases of evaluation that kind of vet that technology as it gets towards the finish line.
Yeah. It also sounds something like a tech price challenge or something. Might be that with different steps of, like if you progress through the steps, you get certain incentives, and then at the end, you might or might not get to an acquisition.
Right.
Next question, are there examples of successful proposals that can be shared for guidance or reference prior to submission for new applicants?
So I think, again, one of the big advantages of how we're doing this kind of two-phased approach is we're not asking for a whole lot of information up front, right? So if you have a technology, if you have a research topic in mind, just putting what you can on in 3 pages, 5 pages is really the way to go. And it allows, again, that collaboration. So if it is something that we may be interested in, we have the pitch that ERDIC Works can coordinate so that you get more information, give and get. Sharing probably, examples and proposals, I tend to kind of veer away from, because you got proprietary information and things like that as well. Yeah. But really, I think that the way that we have this structured is in, again, both sides benefit. To make sure that those ideas are getting in front of a technical reviewer. We're doing the scientific review, up front, and then requesting those proposals. So it's quick and easy.
Hey, Alicia, on that, how do non-disclosure agreements play into that? Because do all of our BAs have NDAs before we review it? So that kind of precludes providing someone an example?
Right, yes. So, and actually that's on the first step. So even though we ask no proprietary information, absolutely no classified information in that first submission, whether it's a pre-proposal under a BAA or a solution brief under the CSO, the first thing that our reviewers are asked to do is to certify an NDA, right? So that information is not shareable.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that non-disclosure component is an important step for the submitters to feel comfortable that what they're proposing to ERDIC isn't being circulated. And for that reason, it makes it difficult to show a successful example. What folks will see on the ERDIC Works portal, though, is links to the guidance documents for both the Commercial Solutions Opening and the Civil Works BAA. And there are actual descriptions in there and suggested topics and even the order of information that should be organized in the submission. So this is, to a certain extent, a new way of doing business to invite these submissions. So this is the first time that, from a Civil Works perspective, this kind of solicitation has been undertaken. So there really aren't examples yet, but there are really good guidelines and instructions about how to approach it. So it should be easy to get started and put your toe in the water and start engaging with ERDIC and see if it turns into a contracting opportunity.
Perfect. That's a good place to remind everyone to go to the ERDIC Works website. Again, that's erdcwerx.org. Lots of resources there, lots of explainers for this. I know we've been sharing the links in the comment section for the CSO and the Collider, so you can kind of get started on those proposals and learn more about them on that website. Alicia, I'm going to start with you on this next question. For proposals, what is the typical expected period of performance, and are there small business requirements?
So typically, again, the length, typically they're 12 months base, and then if you've got options, you'll have another 12 months. I've seen 18-month periods of performance. Again, it's so project dependent. And again, that's why, the BAA and the CSO allow those varying degrees of proposals to come in, and they're not evaluated against each other, right? It's based upon the merit of the technology and funding availability from the government. And so that's what really allows us, to flex with the innovative solutions that are coming in. And so, it's whatever you believe the project needs to be successful.
Sure.
I will say, I think, to reiterate what Alicia mentioned, it is probably dependent project by project. I think some of the CSO topics, or maybe more applied short-term projects under the BAA, that may be as little as 12 months. It may even be less than that. But when we talk about like a foundational basic research problem, 2, 3, 4 year period of performance, in individual chunks to be incrementally funded by fiscal year, I think is anticipated, because those are hard problems. They're going to require a lot of research. And the reality check is if there are academic problems and going to be solved by PhD students and folks working at universities, that's going to be in alignment with their matriculation through their studies. So I think it depends project by project, but we're definitely open and I think very interested in long-term partnerships that would build good contracts that could support that long-term collaboration.
Robert, next question for you. In your remarks, in your opening remarks, you mentioned how USACE Commanding General Spellman has brought an increased focus on innovation and research and development. How have you seen the culture of R&D within USACE grow in recent years? And so I'll start with you on that, and Gaurav, you may have some to add on that as well.
Okay. Well, if you were on the earlier webcast, you probably heard it from him a lot better than you hear it from me.
Straight from him.
But General Spellman is certainly a passionate leader, and I think very visionary about how technology and innovation can benefit the Corps, how the Corps is really seen as the engineer for the nation in all of these grand challenges. I know our prior chief used to say all the time, we don't want the easy problems, just give us the hard problems. And so, those are the problems that are going to require innovation and support research and development. So the chief is certainly passionate about that. He's passionate about how that is impacting the strategy and future directions for our R&D program at ERDIC, how we work with partners and try to bring the best partners from within the U.S. and around the world to those projects. But a critical part of it is I think the last part of the question is outside of R&D. If R&D people love R&D, right? Because we love technology, that's our job. But really where the impact comes is how do we get it into the mission? And I think that's one of the big things that Lieutenant General Spellman has championed is R&D is not just something ERDIC talks about. R&D and innovation is something everybody talks about. So how do we get that into the way that we do business? How do we modernize our business processes and the way that we deliver projects to integrate new technology, whether it's things that we invested in, whether it's things National Science Foundation invested in, or venture capital invested in, any new kind of technology that can improve the resilience, improve the performance, economic value provided by our infrastructure projects, whatever the metric is. He's really been championing that, and so I think it's been, I think, pretty cool over the last couple of years to just see this like cultural transformation in the Corps of Engineers. I think the Corps has always been an innovative organization, but we were doing it maybe more through ingenuity rather than innovation kind of leading from the front. And so it's happening. It's exciting, especially exciting to the R&D community. And I think initiatives like this are just kind of one part of that.
Yeah, I agree with with what Robert just said. I think the Corps has always leaned into R&D. I think the difference now might be it's more deliberate, more targeted, more forward-looking, to at least in the purposes of like this conversation, and the scale of that R&D. Like, just if you look at how this event, right? It's an opportunity event for R&D. Like, this is the first one. We never did this before, so it's obvious that the scale and purpose of R&D in the Corps is changing. Like Robert says, give us the tough challenges, and that's what R&D is doing now for the Corps. We're trying to solve those tough challenges, and in doing so, we are changing the scope, the breadth, and how we transition the technology over to our stakeholders. And how do we bring those stakeholders in from the ground up? I think that's where a lot of the change is coming from. And I'll echo Robert's words, it's an exciting time. The past 3 or 4 years have been really exciting, getting these strategic R&D efforts stood up and going, and looking towards the future with like a lot of hope for R&D in the Army Corps and the federal government as a whole.
Sure. Strategic, I guess, is probably the key word. Kind of also, I guess, when we talk about this and the culture change. Sure. Robert, next question is an infrastructure question, so I'll kick it to you. Is ERDIC pushing for non-corrosive reinforcement of concrete structures for dams, seawalls, piers, and piles?
It's definitely an interest area, and we have that in some of our marine concrete guide specifications now for things like expanding into composites. A lot of interest in composites and other non-metallic rebar, stainless steel rebar, corrosion-resistant materials. That's an interest area. We probably see that more for coastal facilities that have corrosion challenges. At least in the civil portfolio, probably more broadly in the military portfolio. So I guess my answer would be, it's an interest area if it makes sense, right? And in a lot of our projects in freshwater with large cover thicknesses over reinforcement and whatnot, from a life cycle perspective, it may not make sense there. But when we're talking about 100+ year service life projects that ideally we're still going to want to last even longer than that, in corrosive environments, that's an interest area. I don't think that's a particular area in the collider, perhaps related to sustainability and repair materials. There's some alignment there, but we don't have some specific requirements in corrosion, at least on that topic in the near term.
Gaurav, this one's for you. We mentioned the presentations about artificial intelligence and how it's really getting a lot of attention right now. What are some examples you've seen where AI or machine learning is helping support the USACE Civil Works portfolio?
Oh, that's a great question. So and I'm going to answer it from kind of like the water modeling kind of focus area and the applications around the Corps for that. There is a lot of work that the Corps is doing in using AI to optimize our dredge fleet, where the dredging is required, using AI-enabled technologies to pre-position those dredge fleets so that when based on AI input, we know that there might be dredging requirements, we have the resources there to take that dredge material out and build resilience in our navigation channels. The other one is we are doing a lot of work with AI and machine learning and physics-informed machine learning in terms of storm surge predictions. So the Corps does not do storm surge prediction modeling for the nation. We do it for our projects and our emergency response subordinate functions. And we use neural networks and other kinds of machine learning and AI processes to provide information to our stakeholders on what the surge at location might be. Or we might not have that exact hurricane and with this exact same path, but we can infer from AI technologies what the surge might be for a similar track hurricane, and then we can provide that. It's an area that is growing very fast. In fact, I think Google a couple of days ago came out with an AI-enabled level 1 flood prediction map for the entire globe. So anything I say today is going to be obsolete tomorrow when it comes to AI and ML. And AI and ML advancements in water modeling and water risk management is happening at the speed of thought. It is extremely fast, extremely dynamic, and continuously changing.
Sure.
Robert, do you have anything on the?
I think there's interest in that across the board in every project. How can we better utilize data? How can we better utilize these types of tools and supercomputing assets to do things better, do things faster? I will say, kind of getting back to we're supporting the mission. We see a lot of studies on AI for the sake of AI, or we love data, we want to understand our data. A lot of these problems we're talking about, we do understand a lot of the physics and engineering and mechanics behind it. And so we're really looking at those tools as an enabler for us to do things better and faster, right? How can we take what we know today and amplify it to do things much better and faster in the future? So there's a kind of the hardcore data side of it, and it even gets into business processes and all kinds of ways we can use these tools. But I think as far as how we're going to apply them to the mission, it's kind of taking our understanding of these systems, which we don't want to ignore all our historical work in the past, but how can we amplify it with a lot of those tools, I think, in the future.
Yeah, I think the gist of that is creating efficiencies in the mission.
Yep.
The delivery of the mission, like the most efficient way to deliver it is what we'll use. If it's the AI, then we use the AI. If it's our historical numerical modeling or other research knowledge, then we'll use that.
Great. Well, we've taken lots of questions, and that's all the time we have for questions today. We remind you, if you've asked a question, we haven't gotten to it, again, go to the ERDC Works website, erdcwerx.org. We'll have a list of frequently asked questions on there, as well as an opportunity for you to submit additional questions, and we will get responses to you all promptly on that. We've already mentioned several times today, but just a reminder, if you missed it earlier today, we had the ERDC Live broadcast with the Corps of Engineers Commanding General Spellman. You can find that. You can find a replay of that on ERDC's LinkedIn page, so I definitely encourage you to check that out. Again, this is all live now. We've shared the links in the comment section. I think they've had some QR codes there as well, a display of the QR codes, but you can, it's live, so the Civil Works Collider as well as the CSO, you can go follow those links, check it out, and get your proposals in, and it's just exciting to see what's going to come out of this, working together with ERDC and our partners to solve some of the nation's toughest challenges. So we kind of look forward to seeing that happen, and that's all we have for today. So enjoy the rest of your day, and excited to see what's ahead. Thank you very much.